After Isha Salah, we'll have another lecture by the Sheikh Dr. Suhaib Hassan, and we'll talk about the Sayyidina Isa alayhi salam. Then if somebody needs some questions, some comments, you are welcome inshallah. Then we will start with Al-Ustad Adnan Rashid. Ustad Adnan Rashid is a historian with a specialty in the history of Islamic civilization, comparative religion and hadith literature. He is renowned for his debating skills and has debated many high-profile figures in the field of politics, history, and Christian Islamic theology. He has also gained ijazah in hadith from a number of scholars and is presently serving as a khatib in a number of mosques in London. He is the head of the Hitton Institute, as well as a senior researcher and lecturer. The word for him now, inshallah.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salamu ala Rasulillah ma ba'd. A'udhu billahi sami alim. A'udhu billahi sami alim min ash-shaytani rajim. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Wa ma arsalnaka illa rahmatan lil alamin. Wa qala Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. لا يؤمن أحدكم حتى أكون أحب إليه من والده وولده والناس أجمعين أو كما قال عليه الصلاة والسلام. Respected brothers and sisters in Islam, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Today my topic is a very important one. I will be talking on the issue of advising Muslims in the West. What is my advice to Muslims in the West from my little experience? Dr. Suhaib Hassan, Hafizullah, is also present, and I didn't want to speak before him. It is against other of the ulama to speak before him, especially someone like myself. But the reason why I'm speaking first is because I want more people to benefit, and close to Isha, inshallah, more people will be here, and the Sheikh will be able to speak to them, inshallah, and they will be able to benefit from the Sheikh's important advice. I will keep my talk very short. To emphasize the point again, I don't think I should be speaking loud or long in front of the Sheikh. So, what is my advice to the Muslims in the West? We have been taught in the masajid in the West by our ulama and shuyukh for a very long time. A lot of us, alhamdulillah, have been taught the Arabic language, fiqh, hadith, and there is a good process of education taking place in masajid, especially on the day of Jummah, when hundreds of thousands of Muslims attend mosques to listen to the imams. But there are certain aspects of Muslim life in the West and in Britain in particular, which needs working, which needs to be explored and advanced. What are these aspects? What are these points I want to talk about today? Very quickly. Number one, I want to talk about Muslim contribution in politics, living in the West in general, and living in Britain in particular. Number two, I want to talk about Muslim contribution to education. Number three, I want to talk about Muslim contribution to humanitarian work. Number four, I want to talk about Muslim cooperating, what we call a ta'awun between the Muslims. So these are the points I want to address today in front of you. So number one, politics. Why is it important to involve in politics living in the West? Now we are facing a rise in Islamophobia. Islamophobia, to put it in simple terms, means Islam hating or Muslim hating. Islamophobia has become normal in the West, unfortunately. And I am not saying this. Many reputable politicians, philosophers, scholars, academics have acknowledged this, that Islamophobia is on the rise in the West in general. In Britain in particular, no doubt. The rise of far right throughout Europe and in the US, in Australia, not so much in Canada thankfully, but it is happening. And if you might have noticed recently, throughout the West, far right parties have gained a lot of popularity, and they have used this popularity to gain seats in their respective parliaments. And they're using this power to pass laws against Muslims in particular. And xenophobia has spread. And because of this xenophobia, a lot of people are unfortunately leaning towards the side of the far right. So this is a real problem. I'm not making things up. Islamophobia is a real problem. It has become a bigger problem since 9/11. And it has been on the rise. So how do we tackle Islamophobia? If we know it is a problem, books have been written on Islamophobia, published by many academic institutions. And you can go and look at some of these books. What is our solution? Now I'm talking to the masses. The way I see it, I'm talking to the general public. I can use academic terms. I can use academic language which may not be comprehensible to most people. So I'm going to try to make things as simple as possible. One of the solutions I see to Islamophobia, or one of the responses, is to get involved in politics. You must be someone influential in the societies you live in. If you don't have influence to form policies, to influence policies, then you will face, potentially, you will face extremely unpleasant laws coming your way, more restrictions, more suspicion, more policies against your children and your families and your general well-being in the West. Now, I'm sitting in a very beautiful mosque. We are living in Britain. I am in the city of Preston, and this is a beautiful mosque. And I cherish the fact that we in Britain have been given such freedom, and we as Muslims appreciate this freedom. We as Muslims cherish this freedom. We as Muslims thank the British people for this tolerance, for this hospitality they have provided to us for the last 50 odd years. And this is very important for us to acknowledge. It is absolutely crucial for us to speak to the British masses and tell them that we are very grateful. In fact, I believe the amount of propaganda the British people have received in the last 10 to 15 years, if it was another people, I think Muslims would have been facing a different situation. But it is the tolerance of the British people, generally speaking, I'm not talking of all, I'm talking generally, that we are able to walk around, live peacefully, our families are secure, and it is a very good situation. We want to improve it. We want to make it better, not worse. So as Muslims, what can we give to Britain as sincere participants to the society? We are living here. It is home for us. What can we do for home? We have been given so much. What can we return? I think one of the best things we can do is to get involved in politics. And if we feel that the current politicians are not doing a good job in handling problems like Islamophobia or xenophobia or lack of trust and suspicion, then we should come forward and we should bring forward responsible leadership that can actually demonstrate the true nature of Islam to the British masses. So how can we get involved in politics? What happens with the Muslim psyche, Muslim mentality? The first thing that comes to our mind is haram. Politics is haram. Going to the parliament is haram. Haram legislation. kufr billah, shirk billah. Unfortunately, these ideas have been going around. I have seen naive people giving leaflets outside mosques during the days of election. Don't get involved. Don't vote. Don't do this, don't do that. But then what happens is, when you don't get involved, when you don't have your people to represent you, then laws are made against you. Your freedom is restricted by people who do not want you to see, who don't want to see you free in the true sense of the word. So, not getting involved is not an option. What do we learn from the life of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he prayed for the powerful to come to Islam. Let me give you an example very quickly. Again, I don't want to take too much time on these points. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam specifically prayed for two people to come to Islam. Can you please help me? Those two people were? Sorry? Okay. Abu Jahl and Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anhu. Now Abu Jahl was one of the biggest enemies of Islam. Can you imagine Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam praying for Abu Jahl? Allahumma a'izz al-Islam bi ahabbi ar-rajulaini ilayka. Oh Allah, strengthen, Allahu Akbar. Look at the words of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Oh Allah, strengthen Islam by one of these two, whichever is more beloved to you. Either Umar bin Khattab or Amr bin Hisham. One of these two. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepted Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anhu. Why is Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam praying for one of these two? Because they were politically very powerful in Mecca. They were very powerful people in Mecca. What they said was the rule. Abu Jahl was known as Abu al-Hakam, the man of wisdom, the father of wisdom. Umar bin Khattab was from Banu Adi, which was a very powerful sub-tribe, and he was a negotiator. He was one of those people who could read and write in Mecca. Umar, even though he was a young man, he was very influential. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in another report, he said, a powerful believer is better than many weak believers. Why? So what does power mean? Power means when you are able to make decisions, when you are able to influence policies, and it can be done in many halal ways. If you think something is haram, I am not going to change your mind today. I can't. I'm not able to do that. If you think something is haram, don't indulge. But are there any halal ways? Is the question. Or everything is haram. Even living is haram. I am sure there are halal ways to do politics. If you cannot do it directly, you don't want to indulge in it directly, no problem. That's your opinion. We respect your opinion. We respect your opinion. You may have a different opinion on this matter. But you can find halal ways to do things. You can go and speak to the politicians. You can lobby them. You can influence them without getting involved directly. And many examples can be given. Is it allowed to favor someone who is in favor of Muslims? Absolutely. No doubt. We have so many examples. Najashi, the example of Najashi, who was not Muslim at the time when Rasulullah ﷺ sent his followers to him. He was not Muslim at the time, Najashi, radiallahu anhu. He died a Muslim. We know that. Rasulullah ﷺ prayed his janazah. But when the Prophet sent other Muslims to him, he was not a Muslim. And then we have the example of Rasulullah ﷺ praying for the Romans to be victorious against the who? The Persians. Because they preferred Romans over the Persians. So we learn this from the life of the Prophet ﷺ. So indulging in the politics is an absolute must for the Muslims. However you might do it. You can become a counselor, you can do it in a halal way, you can influence the society in a halal way. Whatever you may think is halal, whatever ulama you follow, whatever view you follow, at least be active. Activism is Islam. Without activity, there is no Islam. And the right activity at the right time is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves. So second point I want to make. In fact, if you don't have political leaders, very quickly I want to raise something in your presence. When you don't have political leadership, what happens? The Indian subcontinent was divided. The British governed India for almost 150 years. In 1757, they defeated one of the rulers of Bengal and they overpowered the most fertile provinces of India, the breadbasket of India. The three provinces that fed the Mughal treasury were taken by the British: Bengal, Orissa, and Bihar. These provinces were occupied by the British, and the British took full advantage of it. And it took the British another 50 years to take more lands from the local rulers. 1799, a ruler called Sultan Muhammad Tipu was killed. He was one of the strongest opponents of the British in India, or the British ambitions in India. Tipu Sultan was killed on the 4th of May 1799, and this is when the British imagined themselves to be superior racially, culturally, politically, and economically. This is the first time when they felt that the British can actually rule India. Because as long as he was alive, Tipu Sultan, as long as he was alive, the British could not claim to be superior to the local Muslim powers in India. In fact, before this man was killed, a lot of the British administrators and officers and officials, they started to dress like the Mughals. They started to walk like the Mughals. They adopted the Muslim culture of India. They started to do poetry in Urdu. There's a book titled The White Mughals, written by an author called William Dalrymple. Read the book. He talks about this, how the British officials started to adopt the Indian Muslim culture because it was so powerful, it was so mesmerizing, it was so attractive. But after Tipu Sultan was killed in 1799, the rise of the 19th century brought a new system. Now the British officials could openly be racist towards the Indians. They started to look down upon Indians. They started to look down upon their color. They started to look down upon their culture, their religion. So with this came the missionary activity in India. A lot of Christian missionaries from Britain, they made their way into India. They started to, of course they were not successful because of the ulama and the struggle of the ulama. That's another topic in itself. And they started to look down upon the Indians. The Indians were marginalized. The highest positions were given to the British. The British were not allowed to mix with the Indians. An English woman getting married to an Indian man was unthinkable. It was something crazy. They couldn't think of it. While previously it was okay. So, when you lose political leadership, this is what happens. The point I was going to make was, during the partition, the Muslims had strong leadership in the form of Jinnah and others who came with him. It's a long list of people, very influential people. You know why? Why was it Jinnah? Apparently when you looked at him, he looked like a secular guy who has no attachment to religion. In fact, in his youth he used to smoke cigar and eat bacon sandwiches and play pool. He was an English gentleman, you know. He was an anglicized Indian. But in fact, he became so powerful, he became so influential in Britain that he was one of the best barristers, to an extent that he had a white chauffeur. A white man to drive an Indian around in London was again a big thing. It was not something ordinary. But he, through his education. He went through the system. He was taught by the British. He could look them in the eye and talk to them with no fear. He was a very rich man. He was one of the top barristers. He was a multi-millionaire. By today's estimation, he owned $500 million at the peak of his career. So the British couldn't buy him. They tried to buy him. They offered him a lot. They said, we'll do this, we'll give you that. He said, no. In fact, Mountbatten, the last Viceroy of India, hated Jinnah for his stubbornness. But Jinnah was a strong leader. He was a very strong leader. And for that reason, he was able to get a homeland for the Muslims. A lot of people think India should not be parted. It shouldn't have been parted. It would have been better united. Do you know what's happening in India today? Do you know what's happening to Muslims in India? Any idea, brothers? Do you know? Do you know how Muslims are living in India? Muslims are politically, economically, educationally, culturally, you name it, religiously, they are completely marginalized. In fact, some of the mosques are being attacked openly. They are being demolished. I'm not talking about Babri Mosque. I'm talking about other mosques now being attacked. In the rural areas, the Muslims can't even practice their religion. You can't slaughter cows. Certain states have banned cow slaughter. And there's a famous story about Jinnah and Gandhi having a meeting. Jinnah spoke to Gandhi, and Gandhi said, is it not possible, Mr. Jinnah, that we can live together? We have lived together for so long, for nearly 1,000 years. Can we not live together? Jinnah said, what you worship, we eat. What you worship, we eat. We cannot live together under you, because Jinnah knew the British will leave behind democracy, and in a democracy the majority rules. The Hindus were a majority, the Muslims would be second-class citizens. Even if we were to put the numbers of Bangladesh and Pakistan and Hyderabad put together, Muslims wouldn't be a majority in India. Some people think that it would be 50-50. No, it wouldn't be. So cut the long story short, there was a strong leader defending the Muslims, even though he had some weaknesses in his character. But he was a very sincere leader. He never sold his soul. In fact, when his daughter got married to a Parsi, she came to seek his blessings. He said, you know, you are no longer my daughter. I am the leader of Muslims of India. He said, choose one man from India, anyone from the entire peninsula of India. So long as he's a Muslim, get married to him, I will not object. She said, no. She said, no. She said, my mother was a Parsi. Why did you marry her? He said, she became a Muslim. Her name was Ratan Bai. She became Muslim. So, he said, no. And thenceforth, he called her Mrs. Wadia, not my daughter. And they never met. After the partition, she only came back on his janazah, and that's it. So the point I'm making is he was a strong leader. He had principles and he stood by them. On the other side, the Sikhs, who were also a very important part of the British Army, they had given many sacrifices. In 1857, during the Indian Mutiny, the Sikhs sided with the British. They were massacring the Mughals and the Mughal family and the Muslims. The Sikhs fought for the British in the First World War, in the Second World War, like other Muslims did from India as well. But Sikhs were very important for the British political apparatus. But because they had weak leadership during the partition movement, they couldn't get a country. And they're fighting for it to this day. Likewise, brothers, we learn lessons from history. When Muslims became politically weak, when our influence became weak, we suffered. The decline of the Muslims in Al-Andalus, it affected the entire planet. Some people think, oh, we lost Granada, so what? We lost other territories, we lost Valencia, we lost Cordoba, we lost Seville, so what? Granada was lost in 1492, No, 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 no. It is not simple as that. Anyone read Sheikh Abul Hassan Ali Nadwi's book, The Effects of the Decline of the Muslims on the World? Jazakallah khair. This book is very important, so that you realize the Muslim decline, in particular Muslim political influence, when it declines in the world, what happens to the world? When the Muslims lost Spain, 1492 was the year. That was the year when Christopher Columbus embarked on this journey to find India. He was out to find an alternative route to India. He found America. And that's why, you know why the Red Indians are called Indians? You know why they're called Indians? They're not Indians. They're not Indians. They are Native Americans. To this day they're called Indian, Red Indians. Right? Why is West Indies Caribbean? Why is it called West Indies? It's not West Indies. It is Caribbean islands. Because Christopher Columbus was looking for India, and he still thought he was in India. They thought they were in India. Muslim decline. Muslim decline. And you know, I don't want to turn this into a lecture on how the Muslim decline affected the world. Muslim civilizational decline affects the world. When you go weak, a lot changes in the world. Imagine a world without the Quran. Imagine a world without the mercy of Islam, the beautiful message of Islam. You cannot imagine. That's another lecture in itself. So the point is, if you lose political strength, political influence, not only you suffer at home, the world suffers at large. So you need to influence the politics of the country you live in. You need to make your presence known in the most intelligent ways, in the most legal ways. I am talking about legal means available to you. We simply don't employ them. We don't get involved. We are busy in our shops, our businesses, our taxis, our factories, whatever we do. That's it. But living in the West here, there are certain responsibilities you have to fulfill. Moving on to the next point. Education. Muslims are the most deprived people when it comes to the field of education in Britain. Did you know that? There are almost 3 million Muslims, in Britain, right? How many of them are actually going to universities? The children, I'm talking about the youth. How many of them are even learning Islam, which is primary? Islam is primary for us. How many of us are actually learning authentic Islam? How many madaris do we have in Britain? Alhamdulillah, there are few madaris, but are they enough? And these madaris, how many of them are actually doing the job? And what is doing the job? If you are not preparing leaders, if your madaris are not producing thinkers, independent thinkers, if your madaris are not producing forward-thinking people who are thinking of the world, people who are thinking of Ecuador, Cuba, Colombia, Australia. You know, I know some brothers, they are giving dawah in South America for the first time. Some of these people never seen Muslims. Bolivia, Honduras. It's the homicide capital of the world. And there are brothers from London giving dawah there. Why? The vision. Vision, thinking. British passport, book a ticket, board a flight, land there, and talk to people about Islam. And wallahi, people are coming to Islam in drives. The Muslim community has grown in Cuba. It's a communist country. And in Colombia, Mexico, El Salvador, one of the most dangerous countries in the world, Nicaragua. I know a brother, I met a brother at Hajj. And why am I talking about this? I'm relating this to education. Education broadens your vision. It makes you think big. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made it obligatory upon us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran, هَلْ يَسْتَوِيَ الَّذِينَ يَعْلَمُونَ وَالَّذِينَ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. Are those who know equal to those who know not? Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam tells us, طَلَبُ الْعِلْمِ فَرِيدَةٌ عَلَى كُلِّ Muslim. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is telling us ilm is important. Ilm is an obligation upon Muslim men and women. So ilm primarily to us is the knowledge of Islam, the Quran and the Sunnah. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam made the importance of ilm paramount. Islam kicked off a civilization whereby kids as young as 4 to 5 years old were learning, not only learning, they were memorizing books. They were memorizing texts. This never happened in the history of humanity before, where you have 5 or 6 years old memorizing books. They're internalizing the entire chunky volumes, Quran, and then they would memorize the hadith, and then other books and divans and the poetry, and the list goes on and on and on. This was the doing of Muslim civilization. We were the topmost people when it comes to education. The Europeans learned hundreds of sciences from the Muslims. Throughout the Middle Ages, Muslims were shifting knowledge to Europe. European scholars were learning the Arabic language. Wallahi, there were people in England 8 centuries ago who learnt the Arabic language because they knew this is the lingua franca of the learned world. There were people like Adnan Rashid, a British man in the 12th century. There were people like Robert of Ketton, the man who translated the Quran into Latin for the Europeans. Also, the same man, Robert of Ketton, translated Jabir bin Hayyan's work on chemistry into the Latin language. There were people like Robert the Scot, again an Arabist. There were Englishmen walking around in England, not in Europe. I mean, Europe-wide history is quite huge. I'm talking about England in particular. Englishmen walking around in the 12th and the 13th century CE, walking around the streets of London, Bristol, these were little towns at the time, teaching the Arabic language, learning the Arabic language. Why would they learn Arabic? Because it was the most learned language of the time. The best books in the world were in the Arabic language. Of course, they left the deen. The religion was left aside, but they took other sciences from the Muslims. Name it philosophy, name it knowledge of astronomy, chemistry and other, even medicine. Al-Qanun of Ibn Sina was taught as late as the 17th century in Europe. It was being published in the 16th century in Venice. Al-Qanun. I've seen the copies myself. Why? The European Renaissance was the brainchild of Muslim civilization. And the list, the details are quite far, they're very extensive. One example I want to give you, the Oxford University. You know how it started? It started as small schools. Very tiny small schools, right? And these were schools of philosophy. Philosophy meant at the time all fields of knowledge. That's what it meant at the time. So there was a man called Daniel of Morlaix who had traveled to Spain to learn the Arabic language and learn from the Arabs. He came back and he met a man called Bishop John of Norwich, and they established schools in Oxford. And from the books of Daniel, we know that these schools were directly inspired by the madrasa system of the Arabs in Spain. And that's how the Oxford University came about. Not many people tell you this, not many people know about this, even the Muslims. So we need to learn and educate ourselves. We need to go to universities. We need to learn our deen, number one, priority. Learn the Arabic language, teach yourself Quran, teach your children the Quran, make them morally upright people, make them an ideological people, make them a people who love Islam. Make Islam your dinner table discussion. Make the Islamic civilization, Islamic history a dinner table discussion with your children. Talk to them, give them value. And once they grow up, send them to university with a mindset that you will use this education for more influence, to make this world a better place, to do something great in this world. You know why the Sahaba, Ashab al-Rasul, within 20 to 30 years, from goat herders and camel herders, they became some of the most civilized people on the planet. What happened to them? My question is, You tell me what happened to them. How can they change beyond recognition within 20 to 30 years? What happened? These people who couldn't think beyond their palm trees, their camels and the goats. The Arabs could not think beyond. Within a century of the Prophet's death, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he passed away in the year 11 Hijri. Now, whether it was the 12th of Rabiul Awwal, that's established. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam passed away on the 12th of Rabiul Awwal. The birth, we don't know. 9th, 10th, the Sheikh is there. You can ask the Sheikh during the Q&A what exactly is the scholarly opinion of this. So, the 12th of Rabiul Awwal, 11 Hijri, 632 CE, 732 CE. How long? How long is that? 100 years after the Prophet's death, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Muslims were 500 miles away from here. You know where that is? Near Paris. On the other side, the Muslims were in China. And then they were in India, in Multan. So within a century, what happened to these people? That's only 3 generations. خَيْرُ النَّاسِ قَرْنِي ثُمَّ الَّذِينَ يَلُونَهُمْ ثُمَّ الَّذِينَ يَلُونَهُمْ. The best people are mine, and then the ones that come after, and then the ones that come after. 3 generations. What happened? What could possibly happen to these people that the entire history of humanity has not seen something like it? What happened? The Quran, education, the conditioning of the mind. Condition your children's minds according to the Quran, the vision of the Quran. وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا رَحْمَةً لِلْعَالَمِينَ. Ashabul Rasul, over 90% of them died outside of Arabia. Majority, I would say safely, majority died outside of Arabia. We don't even know where they're buried. North Africa, borders of Afghanistan, current day Persia, Central Asia. What was Abdullah bin Umar doing in Azerbaijan? What was he doing in Azerbaijan is the question. So all these things are very important. Education, brothers and sisters, remember, education is the key to success. Primarily Islamic education, and then what we call the secular education. You cannot be falling behind on it. You know who's teaching Islam in most major universities in the West? Who is teaching Islam and Islamic history? Non-Muslims. Jewish and Christian and atheistic scholars. Muslim scholars are missing because Muslims are not interested in education. You are not the policymakers. You are not writing academic journals on sociology, anthropology, town planning. You name it. And I am a big fan of the Jewish community. I am a huge fan of the Jewish community. You may be thinking, what is he talking about? I'll tell you why I'm a fan of Jewish community. The Jewish community, they are a very small community. Very small numbers, but very powerful, very influential. And I'm not criticizing them. I'm saying they are doing what they are supposed to be doing for their people. They're taking care of their interests, right or wrong? Yes? When they have interests, they want to take care of them, right? What is stopping the Muslims? The question is, what is stopping the Muslims? Muslims themselves. Muslims themselves. Why can we not take important positions? Why can we not educate ourselves enough so that we can take those important positions? Why can we not know our deen enough to be so far sighted and intelligent that we start to think big? You know, as they say, think big, you will do big. When you will think 100%, you will achieve 10% definitely. But if you think 10%, that as long as I get 10%, you will only get 1%. So if you start thinking big, you will start doing big things. Ashabul Rasul, this is the difference that came to their minds. They started thinking big. They started looking beyond the camel. Now they could see on the other side of the camel. They could see on the other side of the palm garden. They could see on the other side of the desert. Because the Quran opened the eyes to the reality of the world. That they have been given this responsibility that they are to make this world a better place. You, the Muslims, need to think like that, that you are to make this world a better place. Stop fighting on mosques. Stop fighting on carpets and tap water. It's not cold, it's not warm. Stop fighting over, things like that. Stop fighting over petty things. Look beyond these things. Once you get involved in these sectarian issues and other problems, this is where it leads to the next point: cooperation between Muslims. Cooperation between Muslims. Muslims are to cooperate with each other. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded us in the Quran. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Ta'awanu 'alal birr wat taqwa wa la ta'awanu 'alal ithmi wal 'udwan. Do not support each other in evil and bad. Rather, Allah tells us, support each other in good and what is virtuous. Do not support each other in bad and evil. So ta'awun between the Muslims, even if we disagree, inshallah.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa Allah. Ashhadu an la أشهد أن محمد رسول الله. أشهد أن محمد رسول الله. حي على الصلاة. حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح. الله أكبر، الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله.
La ilaha illallah. Should I continue? Should I finish quickly and then we'll do the salah? I will continue for a few minutes and then we'll do the salah, inshallah, and then after that Sheikh will be speaking. Okay.
We'll go for another 10 minutes up to 8 o'clock.
Yeah. Okay. So the point I was making was to do ta'awun between Muslims. Muslims must cooperate with each other. It is a command from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah knows Muslims will always disagree. In fact, this is one of the du'as made by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Oh Allah, unite my ummah, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not accept that du'a. That particular du'a Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not accept because this is a test upon this ummah. It is a test upon this ummah. So ta'awun upon haqq, upon the truth, upon what is beneficial is absolutely mandatory upon Muslims. First of all, people who call themselves Ahl al-Hadith or the Salafis, even they, subhanallah, cannot unite. Let alone they are uniting with others, other people who with other schools of thought. So if we cannot unite among ourselves and not think straight and not have a vision for the ummah, then how can we expect from others to unite with us? So unity is a very important aspect of Muslim success. Until and unless we unite, things will happen. For example, imagine if the Muslims were to unite in Britain on certain points. Do you think there would be Islamophobia in Britain? Do you think EDL marches would be taking place? Do you think your sisters and your mothers and your daughters would be pushed around on the streets? Someone wearing hijab, niqab, because there is no man with the woman. You know, there are cases. You know how many Islamophobic attacks have taken place in the last year? Do you have any idea, brothers? Do you know how many women in particular? Women are the targets of Islamophobia primarily, right? Do you have any idea? You know why this is happening? Because Muslims are not united. We are not united. There are so many mosques in Britain, we do not work on common terms. Allah is telling us to come to common terms with Ahlul Kitab in the Quran. Allah is telling us to call the Ahlul Kitab to come on common terms, which is we worship none but Allah. So with other Muslims, the ones we disagree with, we tell them, come to common terms. We worship none but Allah. They all say, okay, alhamdulillah, we believe in that. We follow no one except Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his Sharia. Yes, we all agree on that. Okay, we all agree that we will unite against Islamophobia. Alhamdulillah, everyone wants to do that. Why not? Why can't we do that? We all agree that we want to educate our children, Muslims in particular, educate our children and support them in their education. Yes, we all agree. Right? I'm talking about things we can all agree on. Don't argue about things that you have been arguing about for the last 3 centuries. Can you make a Hanafi do Rafal Yadain by force? Can you? Can you put the gun on the head of the Hanafi? Now you have to pray like me. Yeah? Can you make a Barelvi leave his Aqidah? Can you? There are people who want to unite. Of course we don't unite on this Aqidah. We don't unite on the fiqh. Of course we have our own understanding of Islam, which we cherish, which we uphold, which we believe is true. Which we believe is true and we are proud of it, alhamdulillah. But at the same time, does that mean we look down upon others to an extent that we write them off completely? 2 million of them. 2 million. Allahu Akbar. That's your strength. In fact, it may be a reason for you to give them da'wah, bring them close to you, speak to them with love and compassion, give them love, the love they haven't received from Wahhabis for the last 30 years. This perception they have that these people, the so-called upholders of the Sunnah, are very harsh, very judgmental, very rude people. All they know is to gun you down. That you are a person of bid'ah, you are a person of hellfire, you are a takfiri, you are a, this, you. The list goes on. You are ikhwani, you are sururi, you are madkhali, you are, can anyone else give me another name? Sorry? I mentioned that already. I mentioned that as well. You see? Hizbi, yeah, Hizbi. Yeah. Allahu Akbar. Some have the audacity to point fingers at the ulama. Someone who has spent 40 to 50 years of his life studying Islam, teaching Islam, writing books on Islam. There are people who have only born 15, 20 years ago. They were born 15, 20 years ago. And they now point fingers at the ulama. That he's so and so in such and such. This is the condition we are facing. This happens when we have lost the way. Allah's Messenger left us to love each other. Al-Muslimu akhul Muslim. Al-Muslimu akhul Muslim. La yazlimuhu wa la yuslimuhu. That a Muslim is a brother of another Muslim. A brother, not an enemy. Not someone for you to insult and treat like an enemy. Don't say salam, don't shake hands. Allahu Akbar. What deen are you following? This is why your sisters are being attacked on the street. That's the reason. The reason is because you're disunited. You cannot even defend yourselves politically, economically, ideologically. You are not influential enough. You have many mosques, mashallah, beautiful ones. But use the mosques as your platforms to spread the beautiful message of Islam and unite with others, inshallah. Final point I want to make before our salah time comes in is humanitarian work, living in Britain. Very important point. The first point I raised was about getting involved in politics, however you may deem halal. However you may deem halal, get involved in politics. Don't sit idle in a country like Britain where you have opportunities to do so, because you may lose these opportunities if you don't do so. Number two was education. Educate yourselves and your children. Some of the Sahaba memorized the Quran when they had beard that color, that white color beard. Some of the Sahaba memorized the Quran when their beards were white. So educate yourselves and educate your children. Education is paramount. Without education, you have no future. Allah tells you this in the Quran, and the Prophet ﷺ told you this in Hadith. And this is the example we learn from our ulama and from our scholars of the past. Number three was ta'awun, cooperation with other Muslims. Point number 4 is, very quickly, humanitarian work, what I call compassion. Muslims, wherever they may be, have to be compassionate. If there is no rahmah in the Muslims, then there is no Islam in them. Islam, if it doesn't bring mercy to your characters, if it doesn't bring compassion, if it doesn't bring good manners, adab and akhlaq to your character, then you have not benefited from Islam. You do not have Islam. Like Iqbal, one of the poets, in Urdu, he said, "Khirat ne keh bhi diya la ilaha to kya hasil, dilo nigah musalman nahi to kuch bhi nahi." Even if your mind has accepted, like a lot of the youngsters walking around with takfir and tabdi gun, I call them takfir guns and tabdi, the guns of the West. Cowboys, they used to carry 2 guns in 2 pockets. Both sides they used to have guns, right? One is tabdi, one gun is for tabdi. They shoot you down, called mubtadi'. The other one is takfir gun, kafir. They shoot you down. They finish you. They dehumanize you. These youngsters, they are lacking basic knowledge of Islam and basic adab of Islam. This is not your job. This is the job of the ulama. Why are you taking the responsibility of the ulama to pass judgment on others? You have no authority. You have no right to do so. So compassion, primarily for each other. Rahmah for each other. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, those who do not have mercy upon our youngsters and honor for the elders or respect for the elders are from not. They are not from us. They are not from us. Man la yarham la yurham. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, the one who does not show mercy, the mercy will not be shown to him. Allahu Akbar. So this is primarily between us, the Muslims, compassion, mercy with each other. And next, the final point before we go for salah, very quickly, Sheikh, I'll end this, inshallah ta'ala. The final point I want to make is doing humanitarian work in Britain. Now imagine there are single mothers, millions of them in Britain, living in council states. Up north is full. Up north is full of single mothers living in council states. If the Muslims were taking food bags to them, instead, do send your money, your support to other Muslims around the world. In Palestine, in Syria, in Yemen, or wherever they may be dying of hunger and thirst. Of course, you have been doing a great job. Muslims are the most charitable people in Britain. They raise hundreds of millions of pounds every Ramadan in this country for global charity. But what about the country you're living in? There are homeless people here. There are hungry children here in Britain. Imagine a Muslim man called Muhammad Abdullah Qasim taking a bag of food to a council state, knocking the door, giving the food to this woman who has 5 children inside. She's a single mother and she has 5 children with different men, right? And the child now, who may be white, who may be black, who may be from any background, the child will see this man with a beard, with a hat, giving food to us. Do you think that child, when that child grows up, will join a march against you? No. That child will ever join an EDL march against you? Do you think so? No. Because that child will grow up and say, no, you know what? Qasim was a good man. Muhammad was a good man. Abdullah was a good man. He used to come and, these people who are saying Muslims are evil, Muslims are terrorists, Muslims are extremists. They are wrong, they are liars. Because we saw this Muslim who used to come to our house and help us. Allahu Akbar. Compassion never dies. Final point. Sultan Salahuddin Ayyubi in his lifetime was known in Europe. When he was alive, within his lifetime, news didn't used to travel like it travels today. Even then, people went back to Europe. And when the Europeans, the clergy and the Catholic Church and these people, when they would talk bad of Muslims, they would stop them. Stop. What you're saying may be right, but Salahuddin, no. Salahuddin, no. He was a very good man. He did good to us. So they testified to this fact. Ireland, in the 19th century, there was a famine, potato famine. Irish population died. The British Queen Victoria, refused to send them support. The Sultan from Turkey sent some boats with little provisions. To this day, the Irish people remember that. Ireland is the least Islamophobic nation in Europe. Did you know that? Irish people are the least Islamophobic people in Europe. Why? Because they have this in their psyche. You know what? That Sultan sent us some some food when we were dying of hunger. Compassion never dies. If you really want to live in Britain long term, if you have good ambitions, good intentions for Britain, start doing humanitarian work here at home in Britain, in Preston, in Blackburn, in Manchester, in Bradford, in Nelson, in Halifax, wherever your masajid are. Wa akhiru da'wana and alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen wa salamu alaykum wa rahmatullah jazakumullahu khairan.
Wa alaykum assalam wa rahmatullah jazakumullahu khair. Salam jazakumullahu khair.